Would you like a better garden, better harvests, a better experience in the garden? Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, a master gardener who discusses everything gardening so that you can become a better gardener. And today, I'll tell you about what you need to do for your garden right now. For many of us, gardening is a very personal experience. I am a gardener. I'm going out to the garden. I'm gardening. It's about what the garden can give us. But I like to look at it as a relationship between me and my garden. And in most healthy relationships, both sides should be giving something. And so it shouldn't all be about what the garden can give me. There are times that it should be about what I can give to my garden. And this is something that you can do any day of the year. But for me, I do it twice a year. In February and in August, I spend time to focus on my garden and what I can do to make it better. The idea is to look at your garden from a slightly different perspective. What you can do differently, what you can add to it, what it needs. And I did this back in February, and I have a video from 6 months ago discussing this issue. Now, back then, during the dead of winter, the day that I wanted to discuss it and film it, of course, was in the middle of a blinding snowstorm. I do this twice a year, in the winter and the summer, because I can get different perspectives of my garden during those different times. In the winter, I can look at the garden from all perspectives, 360 degrees, to see what it looks like when it's completely barren, when there's nothing growing. And in the summer, it's the opposite. Now, right at midsummer, I can look around my garden again and see what's growing, what still needs to be built, what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. I like to stand in the middle of my garden and look at it just as an observer, not as the gardener or the owner, but just as someone looking at a garden space and observing, like my vegetable garden. It's green and lush and has been quite productive. And now the new area, like these metal beds. I've never grown in metal beds before, but I like them. I like the way they look, and I need to add more. As I look at this section, I've got plenty of room to expand. And I continue around to another empty area. Maybe I'll put some grapevines here in the future. The trees that I planted for my little mini orchard are doing great. That was an idea that I had during the winter. I got the trees and put them in place. I scan other empty areas, like this wide open area on the north end, perfect location for a greenhouse, so that's a future project. My compost bins are doing fine. A lot of the plants that I've put in this area of the garden, perennial plants, bushes, vines, berries, they're all doing great too. Plants are growing up the arch. The very first perennial plants I put into the garden, it all looks good. But as an observer, I can see that it's missing things. It looks good now, but what can I do for my garden to make it look better? Now, I realize that my garden is bigger than average, and this is the first year that I'm gardening in this space, so there's a lot more to create and build. Well, regardless of the size of your garden, and whether it's new or old, this is still the kind of activity that you should do. You should get out in the garden and look all around, and then analyze it as a gardener. Figure out the pieces and how they all fit together, and then figure out what it is you need to do to make changes or keep things the same. But in the end, the goal is to have a successful garden. And let me show you how I go about doing this. This is my hugelkultur mound that I turned into a pumpkin patch. and I'm very happy with it. I wasn't exactly sure what plants I was going to put in this space, but once I decided to put the pumpkins in and saw how good they were doing, I'm sold. I'm going to be doing this probably every year from here on out. I'm also very happy with these livestock tanks, especially after I painted them. So much so that as I expand my garden into other areas, I'm going to be doing more of these tanks and doing a lot more planting in them. The salad crops and turnips that I have in this bed with the row cover on are just doing fantastic. I've used row covers before, but usually in the spring to protect the plants, not for a fall garden during the middle of the summer. I like the results. So this is another one of those things that I tried, I like, and I'll repeat in the future. It makes my plants happy and my garden happy. This is one of those things that I think I'll do different. I talk a lot about shade cloth, but I didn't use much of it this year. And so the cucumbers and the squash in this bed are doing okay. They're productive, but there's a lot of wilting during the day because we've had just such hot, dry weather. Next year, I want to be doing a lot more shade cloth so the plants don't suffer. The plants in my grow bags and my straw bales are doing okay, and I'll probably repeat them in the future, but I'm not going to do it in this spot. In this area, I'm hoping for next year to have more permanent beds in place. So I intended these as temporary, and as temporary growing areas, they're doing okay. Next year, I'll experiment with other areas of the garden where I'll put the grow bags and see if maybe they do a little bit better with different types of plants. I really like raised beds, and that's my preferred method of gardening. But this in-ground bed is doing great. These plants are very happy. So this has given me motivation to do more in-ground beds as I expand to other areas of my garden space. Where I was planning to do raised beds before, I think I'm going to do more in-ground. That's going to save a lot of effort and money, and obviously the results will be okay. I already said that I'm happy with the results of these metal beds. The intent all along was to make this a completely enclosed area, but I just wanted to do this side first. Well, now I'm going to go ahead and complete the enclosure with metal beds all along this side, extending to this other side, and then a closure at the front on the other side of these plants with a little gate. I spent the time and effort to put mulch around all of my fruit trees. I like the results, but I think I need to put some type of path through here, maybe some stepping stones. And they can lead to the area that I thought about earlier. I think all the way along the edge of this orchard, I should have a low trellis, maybe a fence with grapevines. Grapevines along this whole stretch. I like that idea. I've said in other videos that there's going to be a pergola on this location. This is the middle of my garden, and this is why this was the spot I chose to survey the entire scene. Well, the vegetable garden is mostly put together, so the end of this year, the beginning of next year, now I can focus on this area. I think it'll be a priority. That's one of the things about this exercise, is figuring out not only what you want to do, but which items become a priority. Well, this middle of the garden's pretty bare. I've got some gooseberries, and I've got some currants, and I've got some aronia already in place. They'll grow, but I need to get this structure in to anchor the whole garden as I expand to the edges. And this was a bit of an experiment, and I like the results. So I have currant bushes and some comfrey, and then I put in some butterfly weed, and it's just beginning to flower. And I've already seen butterflies react to it. I think that's amazing. So this has given me more motivation to put in more flowers in this space. I'm planting flowers around it, but I wasn't sure what to do in this particular bed. These flowers have helped me make that decision. Next year, more flowers to fill out this space, to give me color and to help break up all of this steady green. My original plan for the garden called for this arch to act as a trellis for vining plants, and I was sure that was going to work out. Well, I started with some gourds just to get a feel for how it would look, and I like how it's going to look. So I have a grapevine and some honeysuckle on this side that are just starting to grow, some more grapes on this side. It's going to take a few years before they start to fill in this space, but I'm going to be happy with the result based on what I can see with this gourd. So my decision has been validated. The plan for this entire space is to fill it with flowers as a pollinator and a cutting garden. But you can see there's nothing here. I'm going to have to do a lot of work to get this soil ready, to get this whole area ready. But because I've seen so much activity already with pollinators and bees, I decided to go ahead and move up my priorities a little bit and at least get this one end bed started. Pretty soon, I'm going to put some seeds in here during the fall so that in spring, I'll get some early flowers. I've had some viewers comment on this space, thinking it was a lawn that I didn't know how to take care of. Well, not at all. This is supposed to be bare ground, but it's covered with weeds. At some point, I'm going to make this a stone patio, but it gets back to priorities. I'm focusing on my plants right now. If I have a mild winter, I'll be able to deal with these weeds and put the stone in place. But I have lots of plants and other planters that are going to be around the edges, and I don't think I'll get to them, probably in the next year. So as I do the observation and the analysis and then the future planning, it's all about priorities. And for me, right now, this isn't a priority. A major reason for the February and August review is for garden planning, so that I know the structures and what needs to be done. I can actually set a schedule and plan out all the activities. This is especially good in the winter when you really can't do much else in the garden. Well, in summer, we get so focused on doing all of those things in the garden that we don't necessarily think about what we need to do in the fall and winter. I've been accumulating a lot of wood chips, so when the cold weather comes and the plants begin to die, but I can still get outside and work, well, I can spread wood chips around more of the trees and in pathways, and especially as a mulch in the pollinator garden. So use this time to plan out activities to keep your gardening season going as long as possible. Now, every time I'm in the garden, I'm doing the best I can to get the work done in the moment, but I'm always thinking about the future. I'm always looking at plants and beds and pathways and thinking about how they need to improve, what needs to change, what needs to be tweaked a little bit. Setting aside for me 2 times a year is important because the difference is when I'm out here on a daily basis thinking about some of these things, I can build upon the ideas. But when I do a formal review with the intent of planning the garden and the activities, now I can put those ideas in my garden journal or in some type of log or schedule to make sure that those things aren't forgotten and that they do indeed take place. And if you take that approach where every day you're thinking about it, but a couple times a year you actually make a plan for it, well, you're definitely going to have better success. And you're doing this for the garden, so it will improve. And along the way, you'll improve and you'll become a better gardener. Also, another way to become a better gardener is to watch some more GardenerScott videos. So go ahead and click on one of these now. I'm GardenerScott. Enjoy gardening.